Hey, since I'm thinking about it, I just made my 2021 week update. I was thinking about it, and I got asked to do a how I told my parents video. So yeah, when I found out, my mom for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, before I was supposed to have my period, I was not feeling good. I was tired all the time, and my appetite increased a lot, and my mom's just like, I think you're pregnant, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I was like, I haven't even had my period yet, it's coming. And she kept saying, she's like, you're pregnant, and I'm like, no, I'm not. And so the week comes for my period, and normally my period isn't dead on. It's always like, 3 days late, 3 days early, 2 days, whatever. It's never dead center. So the day the period comes, and she's like, have you had your period yet? And I'm like, no. And she's like, you're pregnant. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I was like, you know my period's not completely accurate. So 3 days pass, and she's like, have you still have your period? I'm like, no, because you're stressing me out. And now I'm thinking, I'm like, oh crap, I think I'm pregnant. And so I don't think anything of it. A week passed, and I'm like, okay, now where's my period? And my mom's like, you're gonna go take a pregnancy test. And I'm like, no. I'm like, no, I'm not. And she's just like threatening me. She's like, oh my god, if you're pregnant and all this stuff. It was not a good time. And I wasn't telling my boyfriend this at the time, because I was just freaking out, and I didn't want him to freak out. So second week comes up, it passes, so I'm 2 weeks like now, and I'm like, oh crap. So I decided, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna try, just go take a test. And so I didn't want to go to Walmart, because a lot of people hang out in Walmart that I know or work there. And so I went to the dollar store, and what sucks is you have to ask. And so I'm like, can I have a pregnancy test? And she just looks at me, and she was like, what, how much do you want it? And I was like, the cheapest one. So I bought it for $1. And I got two of them, and inside the box. And so when I got it, I didn't have to pee, so I didn't want to go home. So I went and drove around, got some food, came back home, went to my room, and I was watching TV, eating my food. And I had like a big old cup, and normally I get like a small because I can't drink it, but I was like, I have to pee. And it wasn't in the morning, it was lunchtime. And they say that first morning pee is supposed to be the best pee, but I'm too stubborn to wait that long. So I got the big old gulp. And so once I had to pee, went to the bathroom, and they say it takes 5 to 10 minutes to show up on the test. That's bullcrap. It showed up instant. It was like, bam, you are pregnant. It was like 2 harsh lines. And I have a picture of it, but it was awful. And like, I was just like, kind of in disbelief. I was like, what? And so I read the directions thinking, maybe 2 lines means you're not pregnant. And turns out that's not true. 2 lines mean you are pregnant. And here's the test I took. And the lighting, there it is. So yeah, that was really, whoops, I dropped my phone. That was intense. And so I started freaking out, and I'm just sitting there, and like, I guess I was in my room, so I didn't have my shorts on. I just had like my underwear and a shirt. And I had my phone right here because I took the picture of the test, and I sent it to my boyfriend. And he asked me, he's like, what does 2 lines mean? And I was like, are you serious? And so I was like, I'm pregnant. And he didn't believe me. He was on vacation. He was like, no, you're not. And I'm like, yeah, I am. And he's like, no, we haven't had sex in like 3 weeks because it sucked, because we decided that we weren't going to have sex anymore because we decided that, well, I decided, I was like, if you love me like you say you do, then you'll wait. And so we decided not to have sex, and so it was like 3 weeks ago. He's like, that's impossible, we haven't had sex. And I'm like, obviously it is, because there's 2 lines right there. And I had the test. I think I was looking at it, and I have my phone right here. My mom opens the door, and I throw the test under my desk, and she's like, are you sending nude pictures? And I'm like, because I had my underwear and I'm in a shirt, and I'm like, no. And so I was just like, oh my gosh. And she pulls out, she has a Walmart bag in her hand, and she pulls out a test, and she's like, you're gonna go take this test right now. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I already know. And I didn't want to tell her, not while I was in the room or in the house or in the whole vicinity of the town. So I was like, I just want to pee, I can't go. And so she's like, okay, well, when you have to pee, you're gonna go. And I was like, I'm gonna go hang out with my friend, and then I'll take it, okay? And she's like, no. And I'm like, Mom, please. I was like, you are stressing me out. And she's like, fine. So I called my friend. I was like, you have got to come ASAP. This is an emergency. And she said, okay. And so she came and picked me up, and I pulled it out, and I was like, I am pregnant. And she's like, are you kidding me? And like, she pulls over, and she's like freaking out. She's like, oh my God, there's a baby in my car right now. And I'm like, well, like, it's not really technically a baby yet, but yeah. And so we're both freaking out, and then we're driving around, and she's like, you have got to tell your mom. And I was like, okay. So I know, sucky move to do, but I sent her the picture that I sent my boyfriend. And she said the worst possible thing ever. She said, I'm really disappointed in you. And I don't know if you're like me, but when parents say that, that was just, oh my gosh, that's like the worst thing to say. And I think parents know it, because I'm going to say that to my kid if it does anything bad. I'm just like, I'm really disappointed in you, because that is just like, it hits a nerve. And so I'm all upset. And then my dad calls, and he's like, why won't you listen to your mother? And he doesn't know that she knows now. And I'm like, I am. And he's like, well, and he doesn't know the whole story. So he's like, why won't you just take a test if you're not pregnant? He's like, what does it matter? And he's like, do you think you're pregnant? And I'm like, no, Dad. I'm like, and then I start crying, because that's my dad. And I'm like, I already took a test. And he's like, okay, and I didn't say anything. I just kind of sat there and didn't say anything on the phone, and he figured out, and he's like, then I hear him crying, and you know, dads don't ever cry. And so that really upset me. And so I start crying, and my friend starts crying, and then we're all crying, and then he's like, it's gonna be okay, blah blah blah, we'll get through this. And he's like, don't tell Joseph. And I'm like, I already did. And he's like, why? And I'm like, well, because, you know, he's kind of involved in this. And he's like, okay, well, what does he think about it? And I told him that he's kind of in disbelief right now. And he's like, okay, well, that's suspected. And then he's like, just, when you come home, we need to talk. And I was like, okay. And so I stay at my friend's house as long as possible. And like, I finally go home, and me and my parents have this long talk about how my life's gonna change, and how I can't be a cheerleader anymore, and everything's gonna be really hard and people are gonna look at me different, because I was I still am, I was a goody girl, the one that got good grades and was a cheerleader and just never went to bad parties. Like, I would go, but I wouldn't do anything bad. Like, all my other friends, they'd be drinking and doing that stuff, but I wouldn't. I'd just be sitting there because I had enough craziness for, like, 4 people. I didn't need to get drunk. I didn't need that. So, I was just, like, the person that people didn't think that would happen to that girl. And, like, I was just a virgin, like, a few months ago, so, yeah, that sucked. So, I didn't tell anybody at school, and I didn't tell any of my friends. I only told my friend Emily, which was the girl that was in the car. And then, not a month passed, like a few weeks passed, like probably 3 weeks. And, my parents are getting more nice now, like they're finally understanding. They actually got excited by then, and now they're really excited, but they were just like, yay, we're gonna have a little grandbaby and blah blah blah. And then my mom, she's like, I'm gonna be a young grandma. She's like, thank goodness. And I'm like, you're welcome. And I didn't tell anybody, but then, like, my coach, and she's really mean and really strict, she comes in and she's just saying how we're not doing what we're supposed to and blah blah blah. And I'm hormonal, so she leaves the room and I start crying, and like, I'm like, I can't do this anymore, because like, she never, our coach was never really a good coach. She never said that we did a good job, never did anything. Like, she's just really mean all the time, especially to me. I don't know why. And like, so I just start breaking down, and everybody's like, what's wrong? And Emily's like, I think you should just tell them. And so I tell them, and then they're all like, they all freak out, and they're like, oh my god, what are we going to do? We don't have a flyer anymore, because you can't fly in the air because you have a baby. And then, so we just think, you know, stick it out. There's like 2 months left of cheer, and I'm like, I can't even have that long. I was like, I'm probably gonna quit now. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because my cheer uniform is getting a little bit too tight. And it wasn't because of baby, it was because I was bloated. So yeah, I ended up quitting, and then I don't know who told, but one of the cheerleaders told, and then it got around school, and then people would come up to me and they're like, are you pregnant? And I'm like, that is none of your business. And then it ended up, I was just like, you know what, they're gonna find out anyway. So when they said, I'd be like, yeah, you got a problem? So that sucked. So yeah, that's how I told my mom, my friends, and my school, and my family. So yeah, it wasn't the nicest way to do it, but it was the easiest, because I was a chicken. But yeah, I hope if anybody has the same situation as me, that would be the safest route if you're scared of your parents. But I think, I honestly, like, people say the nicest and like the best way is to sit down with your parents, but really when it comes down to it, it's really scary. And I feel like I kind of dodged the confrontation, because when you tell them that, the first thing that's gonna go through their head is my baby, and like, they're just gonna freak out, and they're gonna cuss, and they are going to act like it is the worst possible thing. Then after, they're gonna be more okay. So that's why I stepped out. Like, I literally left town. Like, I made my friend drive all the way outside of town to tell my mom, because that's how deathly I was scared. See, I told you, I have the worst pregnancy brain ever. I will make up words. I was deathly scared. Yeah, that's my new word. Deathly afraid, whatever. But yeah. So if you want the safest way, I suggest that. If you want the nicest way, go sit down. You know, go sit down with them. Good luck, because I could not do that. So yeah, that's how I told my parents.